Ashley here, and welcome back to Just to Jet. In the past, I did a travel tips video, which I can link above and below, and today I am bringing you 15 more travel tips. So similar to my last video, a few of these may seem very obvious, but you know what they say about common sense. So it's never hurts just to bring them up. You never know what may occur to someone and what may not occur to someone. So let's just start with the first one, which may seem obvious to some people. So when you're going through security, don't get behind a family. So, you know, when you get through, when they check your ID, sometimes they're directing you so you don't have a choice, but sometimes you have a choice of several lanes. You want to try to find business people because they tend to probably travel a lot, so they know what they're doing, they know how to get through quickly. You don't want to get behind people with kids and with a bunch of looks like their stuff is all disheveled, because obviously they're going to take longer getting through. To kind of reference a tip that I said in my last video was get TSA pre-check, because then no matter who's in front of you, usually there's just one or two lanes, but they don't have to take a lot of stuff out. So, but if you are going through the regular TSA line, try to scope out who's in line in front of you so you can pick the quickest line. So step number 2 is to boost your immune system before you fly. So this is something I started doing after my last European trip when we knew there was a sick toddler like 2 seats down from us, and they were just coughing for 11 hours. And we had about 24 hours in London before we came down with what she had. So from that experience, I try to boost my immune system, whatever that means to you, whether it means taking a multivitamin, drinking a lot of vitamin C, whatever. I've now started taking Emergency the day before, the day of, and the day after I fly, just so I can kind of cover my bases. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to try to limit what can get into your system. And tip number 3 kind of goes along that same note, trying to stay healthy when you're on a long haul flight, or any flight really, whether it's an hour long or 11 hours long. So there's been a lot of talk about the air quality in airplanes, and I've read the book called Cockpit Confidential. It was written by a airline pilot, and he covers a lot of ground about airline travel, period. But he does address the issue of the quality of the air, and the quality of the air is pretty much as good as you'd get anywhere else where you're around a lot of people. The air is filtered every 2 or 3 minutes in the cabin, so you're not likely to get more sick from the air in an airplane. But he does say people probably tend to get sicker on an airplane because of the shared surfaces. So I always now travel with a little Clorox or whatever cleaning little thing, and I wipe down my tray, I wipe down, my seat rests and my belt buckle and stuff like that. And so I'm just, trying to limit me getting sick and it really putting a damper on your trip. So step number 4 is something I've really had to force myself to do. And that is to stay hydrated during your flight. It is dry, the air is much drier in there, so then you dehydrate faster, which just not only makes you not feel great when you land, so, and your skin and all kinds of stuff. Sinuses can feel different. I mean, there's so many things about with dehydration and dry climate that can do. So you really should make yourself drink water when you're flying. Now, the reason I've had a problem with this is because I don't like to get up constantly going to the bathroom. But, so I understand that if that's your thing, you just want to try to use the restroom as little as possible on a plane, because it's kind of a hassle. You have to maybe have strangers get up. So I get that, I really do. But if you can, try to stay hydrated on a plane. Your body will thank you later. So tip number 5 is mostly, I had in mind for long haul flights, and that is bring snacks. I mean, you can bring snacks for even a short car ride, obviously. But for long haul flights, it's really important, especially if you have certain dietary requirements. So if you're gluten-free, if you're vegan, which I am, if you're vegetarian or anything like that, usually, most always, you can request a meal that meets your needs 24 hours before your flight leaves, and they will have that meal for you. But they mess up sometimes, and also we had to our flight was canceled once from Dublin to I think Chicago was our layover, and we had to take 3 other flights to get home to San Francisco eventually. Of course, they didn't have vegan meals on board because we weren't supposed to be on that flight. So we were running through the airport grabbing stuff that we could eat on a 6-7 hour flight. So if you're on an 11-hour flight where you have several meals, you could literally just be eating peanuts or pretzels for that whole time and no meals because they didn't, expect you, or you didn't request it, or they messed up or whatever. So it's always great to like play it safe and bring some snacks with you especially on a long haul flight. So tip number 6 is basically just cover yourself for some worst case scenarios, whether you're on a plane or you're in the airport or on the go or whatever. And that is to pack some basic first aid essentials. And some of these maybe not apply as first aid, but I would say Band-Aids for obvious cuts, obviously, but also for blisters on your shoes, or that a shoe has a certain spot that bothers you, but you still want to take them on your trip, you can place them there. Obviously, if you're walking a lot on vacation, you might not expect that your shoes will hurt you in a certain place. It's great to have those on hand in your bag all the time. I never travel without Pepto-Bismol and Advil, and that's really saved me, because buying that just at the airport, they know how to charge for that. So I always have those on me when I'm traveling, and it's just good to have them. You don't have to worry about tracking them down, especially if you need some medication, if your stomach hurts or you have a headache. It's just one less thing to worry about until you feel better. So tip number 7 is kind of an interesting one, and that's prepare yourself for a fight with whoever you're traveling with. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to have your trip ruined or anything like that, but I know for my husband and I, sometimes our travel can get stressful, and then we start kind of snipping at each other, and then we get into a little argument. So I don't want anyone, if that happens to you, or with your spouse, your partner, or just a travel companion that you're going with, a friend or anything, don't feel too, don't let it get to you too much if you start snipping at each other when you're traveling, because traveling can be stressful. Are we getting there on time? Is this and that? Is our baggage gonna fit? Is our baggage overweight? Or, all of that. Did our gate change? Some of that stuff can get stressful for people, and you might start snipping at each other. So just be easy on yourselves and each other. And if it does happen, just when you get there, wipe the slate clean and then enjoy your trip. But don't be too upset if it happens. So tip number 7 is when you finally arrive at your destination. I always buy my attraction tickets ahead of time if I can do that. It really helps me plan out my days. And as I mentioned in my last travel tips video, I'm a planner. I know that's very kind of sometimes frowned upon about people that like to travel. They be spontaneous. I want to see what I want to see, and I want to see when it's most convenient to see it. So getting my tickets ahead of time, so I don't spontaneously show up at some very busy tourist attraction and have to wait in line for 2 hours or 3 hours. For example, I did try to get tickets to the Anne Frank house in Amsterdam. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get them. They were just too sought after, and I just didn't, get into the system early enough. We had to wait 3 hours to get in there. And maybe if I had looked a little earlier, we could have just went in, at an appointed time. So that's not a situation I want to go through if I can avoid it. So try to buy your attraction tickets early on. So tip number 9 kind of goes hand in hand with tip number 8. If you can't get tickets for a very busy tourist attraction, try to get there as soon as it opens, or before would be even better, maybe 30-15 minutes before it opens, so you're right there when you can be the first ones in. Again, using the Anne Frank house as an example, I knew I didn't have tickets for it. So we got there right when it opened, and there was still lines for blocks. So we did the best we could with that, but we could have waited a lot longer if we had gotten there a few hours into the opening times. So tip number 10 is something that was actually suggested to me for my Berlin trip, and that was that somebody had went to Berlin previously and found a really cool free walking tour. So my husband and I looked into it, and we did it, and it was a great experience. And you can just Google free walking tours in whatever city that you're visiting, and usually based on donations at the end. So you just give the tour guide whatever you feel is appropriate at the end of your tour. And our tour was about maybe 2.5 hours long. We went to all the big spots in Berlin. We walked and walked and walked, a lot of exercise. It was freezing, but you'll get that when you visit, Berlin in December. But yeah, it was a great experience, and it's definitely something I'll look into in other cities that I visit. So tip number 11 is something that I've had to start considering with my dog getting older. She's been kind of dealing with some health issues over the past year, and that has made me want to make sure that I have refundable hotel and plane tickets. So nobody really wants to pay for this because they are more expensive. you know? So I get that, because we always had non-refundable everything. It's never been a problem. But now that we don't really know, there's a possibility that maybe our dog could have some health issues and maybe we would be able to go on a trip at the last minute. We really think it's valuable now to have those kind of safeguards in place so you don't lose everything. So I've come to appreciate getting refundable plane tickets and hotel rooms more now. So definitely consider that if you have some kind of situation that, I mean, you could have no situation like currently and something could come out of the blue even. But if you think that there might be some reason you need them, consider it. So tip number 12 is something that I've always done, but almost like I don't feel like anybody else really does it, which is so obvious. And that is to make your even your carry-on bag or your check bag a showstopper. Like, make it's yours, and you know it's yours, and no one's gonna confuse your bag for theirs. I've always had like really bright, crazy patterned something on there to really make it stand out. Some people still get normal bags and they put ribbons or whatever on them, and that's fine too, but mine's always been very obvious. So much obvious to the point where I've been in a taxi line and people have been like, hey, you're on my plane, because they noticed my bag when they were like walking, you know, they saw it in like the cabin. So I really make sure that that's the case. My husband has an away case, which is very popular right now, and they only come in a few colors. And somebody actually picked his bag up and was leaving. And he said, ooh, that might be mine. And they checked, he stopped her and checked, and yes, she was walking away with his bag. So if he hadn't noticed that, he wouldn't have had his stuff, because it's just a plain black case, and an away case, which is a very popular brand right now. So I told him, we gotta do something about your case to make it a little more obvious that it's yours. So yeah, people just always have these plain black cases, and so does everyone else. So try to do something to make your bag stand out. So tip 13 is also something that you think would be extremely obvious, but sometimes it isn't. And that's to bring a portable cell phone charger with you. Just like those little charger bricks, you can have one that has like a lot of charges in it, maybe one charge, so as long as you can get some juice into your phone when you need it, I think that's good. So, I mean, if you're out all day and using your phone to take pictures, looking up directions, whatever, like translating, anything, like you're gonna be using the juice up in your phone. So I think it's always a good idea to bring some kind of portable charger with you when you're out for the day. So tip 14 is kind of could be a time saving and a money saving tip, and that's you don't have to eat every meal out when you're on vacation. Obviously this depends a lot on the accommodation you have. You might not even have a microwave, you might not even have a fridge, but you might have some accommodations that you can work with. And if you do, don't feel bad about eating in the apartment or kitchenette or whatever you have. Personally, we often eat breakfast in our hotel room, especially if we have to be at a very popular tourist attraction that we don't have a ticket for. You know, we want to just eat and get out the door. That's really great. Save money with that. You can make oatmeal, just hot water in the room, bars, whatever. You know, we don't always do that because I love breakfast and I love eating breakfast out. So we do that. But sometimes it helps just here and there to eat a meal in your room. So my last tip number 15, is basically a more general tip that you just kind of need to mull over depending on your location, but that is to respect the local area. That it's people, it's the nature that it's in, I mean, the surroundings, all of that. It's history. You don't want to be ignorant to those things. For me, one thing that always is on my mind, definitely as a vegan and someone that cares about animal rights, is if I'm interacting with animals in some kind of capacity, I need to look into the organization, because I could be harming those animals, like, you know, going to like somewhere where I'm petting koalas, or I'm going to a monkey thing, or I'm riding elephants or whatever, which I would never do. But you know, you want to look into those to make sure they're sanctuaries and they're not like for profit circus type situations. And that's just one aspect of it. You want to make sure you're respecting the culture and the people and their history there. So that's just something that on a case by case basis, you don't want to be ignorant to those things, because you want to be a respectful visitor to where you're going. Okay, so those are 15 more travel tips that I have for you. And as I keep making lists, I will hopefully do more of these, because I learn more. A couple of these were brand new to me since I made my last video, because as you travel, you always learn. So hopefully this won't be the last travel tips. And if you have any travel tips, leave them below, because even if you think they're obvious, because you never know what hasn't occurred to people. So thanks very much for watching, and if you're new here, please subscribe. Bye!